Welcome to It's Not All Black and White.
My name is Cera, I'm black.
My name is Matthew, I'm white. This is the Interracial Couple Podcast, and welcome to today's episode on social distancing, quarantine, and COVID-19.
So we are stranded in Kenya.
Yeah, we are. How does that feel to be stranded in Kenya?
I panicked when I learned that we were actually stranded. Not that it was news, but I still panicked.
You panicked before we called the embassy and said, what's going on? And they said, leave within 48 hours, or we don't know when you can leave.
Yeah, I knew that, but that doesn't mean that just because I knew that, I wasn't going to panic. But you didn't panic.
No, I didn't. I tend to not be a panicker, but you don't either tend to be a panicker. But it was, the direct impact, I have to admit, the direct impact on my daily life is fairly minor in the actual sense. So in the theoretical sense, it could be big, right?
Yeah.
Because we have tickets to go back to America via Europe and on different airlines with a week layover. So everything is completely up in the air. So planning what we're even going to do, like to even call the airlines, makes no sense because the airlines don't know what's happening. So there's a sense of being in a place of unknown, which is both someplace where you could panic or someplace where you say, you know what, I'm just going to kind of keep going and taking the kind of the punches or the blows as they come and seeing what happens.
I agreed with all that, but I feel like for me yesterday is like I needed to hear from like an authoritative figure. Like I needed to know what's going on. Like I knew what was going on by reading the news and talking to people, but I needed that confirmation that I was actually stranded.
So you knew that you were stranded. You
Correct.
knew everything, but you just needed somebody to tell you what you already knew.
It sounds silly, but I did. Like I needed to call the embassy, and I needed
and to call the airlines and have
call
them
the
say,
airlines.
There's nothing you can do.
There's
Just wait.
nothing I can do. But before I did that, like it just was like, what if I could leave, and I had to like look at it and be like, you know what? I'm not gonna leave in the next 48 hours that they're asking us to leave. And I'm okay with that. I even came to you and I was like, I think we need to talk about leaving in the next 20. Like I knew we're not going to leave in the next 20 to 48 hours, but I still wanted to talk about it.
We needed to address it and just
Correct.
acknowledge what was going on.
Yeah, and you did not need to do that.
No, but I will say that, so when you said it sounds silly, it does sound silly, but I also think that that's pretty common in so much of our lives is that I almost feel like even when people go to therapy, for example, at least this was my experience, was I just need somebody to tell me what I already know. We even often go to people for advice, like, hey, I need some advice. You know what you need to do.
Most of the time you
right?
actually do.
Most of the time, it's fairly clear. You just need to kind of talk it through and say, okay, now, so there's actually something about just a confirmation and I think an acknowledgement or some might even say just sort of a naming of it. I just need to acknowledge it, name it. This is what it is, so that I can actually choose it. Because we actually talked about this a little bit earlier. It's a slight divergent, but to when something comes up in your life where you need to make some kind of compromise, the compromise can be difficult if you're just like settling for it or like, okay, I'll do whatever. But when you choose the thing that the other one wants, your whole attitude towards it changes. So in this, like we're stuck here in Kenya where we don't know what's going on. I've got a visa that expires in a little over a month. So we've got other issues, but I still needed to make a choice to say, I'm not stranded here. I'm actually choosing to stay because I could go and put in a very expensive flight on my credit card and get out and could have gotten out, but I chose not to do that. So that was actually a choice.
Was that really a choice? I didn't feel like, is that really a choice? Like I cannot do that. My business has tanked. There are no sales. I'm not making any money. And I don't know when I'm going to be making money next. So when they said like you need to, and I have people that I have employees that depend on me, so to me it was just like, I didn't feel like it was a choice, even though it's a choice not a choice. It's a decision that I need to like accept.
Yes, right. So it's a difficult decision. And many decisions in life can be very difficult, but it can still be, the shift is it's a choice. We did. That was what you said. You said, I want to talk about this. Are we going to leave or not? And the thing was, no, we're going to choose to not panic. We're going to stay. We're going to see this through, and we're going to deal with the consequences of staying as opposed to the consequences of charging it on a credit card and going. Because both carry consequences, and we just had to choose this one, which I think is the right choice.
Yeah, and there's like, I feel like talking about choices or decisions that we've made, like I think like there are ways that we both, I don't know, consciously or unconsciously, we've chosen to deal with what's going on in the world at the moment. I feel like for me, it's been like, because of there's so much uncertainty in our life, like I've made sure that there's like something that's certain. And to me, that is like working out. And like I've been religiously working out every day because I know that I can plan for that. Like this is something that I can control. And the days I haven't worked out, I feel like I become slightly depressed. Like I slightly go under because I'm like, I don't have control over anything, but that's like an hour, 2 hours of my day that I can control.
Right.
So for you, what has that been?
I guess, I'll go, I have not felt that sense of powerlessness or even great uncertainty. And I think some of that goes from, I've had so much uncertainty in my life. And I think, I've read, I know Tony Robbins talks about this too, but, that one of the things that we need is certainty, as a need. And there are just varying degrees of that certainty. So, for example, like when you jump out of an airplane with a parachute on your back, there is a sense of uncertainty. But the reality is falling is actually certain.
True.
But if you jumped out of an airplane and then all of a sudden you're falling and you're about to pull your parachute, and then before you pull your parachute, you get pulled back up, that would be even scarier because that's outside of what is like the certainty for me. So jumping out of an airplane for me, there's a level of uncertainty, which I'm perfectly fine with. But the level of certainty is actually falling, So, and then if I can go back to like the Great Recession in 2007, 2008, and then the few years after that, with how am I going to pay the mortgage? How am I going to feed the family? There was so much stress around the uncertainty and the process of kind of going through that. And now to look back, and one of the things that I say to myself whenever something comes up that's really uncertain is that I've made it this far. I've never starved. I've been hungry, but I'm not that hungry. I have been, sure, there were times where I was technically homeless, but I still had a place to go crash. So I've never, spent the night out in the rain. I've never had to sleep under a bridge. I've gotten to have at least a meal a day, at the very, very least. So, so to me, at this point, the uncertainty is actually one of the certainties in life. And so you said, I need something that I do. For me, it hasn't been external, it's been internal, and just saying that how am I going to relate to this is that every day there's a level of uncertainty. Something could always be. And what for me is just, I'm going to do the things that I love to do with my day. I'm going to give myself time. As you said, we meditate. So we meditate, I'll go on a run, we go on a walk. And rather than let the possibilities of what could be, or even the external things that could be impacting me, I can just give myself a little bit of freedom and a little bit of agency and a little bit of control and just say, I'm not going to let all of these what ifs or even the external impact my internal. I'm going to let my internal, state of being have a greater impact on the external instead of vice versa.
That was deep.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, that's what self-quarantining, I guess, gives you is time to think and ponder. And so that's where that comes from. Because here we are. So we have, basically, we're moderately self-quarantined, which we kind of do anyways.
I know.
Right?
I think like the way we live our lives has not changed much.
Not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot. No.
We do have 2 to 3 people who show up at our house every day to work, because this is our living room, eating room, working room. And, there's a basin outside to wash hands and with their soap. And, we're taking different precautions. We don't shake hands when people come in. So we're taking certain precautions, but things haven't changed enormously.
No, and like things in like, I've been reading the few times I've read the news or I've talked to my friends and family that people are panic buying in the US, which I haven't really seen here. And I think maybe people are my sister told me that people are panic buying in Nairobi, where people have more money and resources to do that. But in Nakuru, people don't have that much money, and people are
to go spend
poor.
to go spend a bunch of money on 50 rolls of toilet paper and whatever. You have to be able to afford that, and actually panic buying, and when you put it that way, is actually a luxury, isn't it?
It is a luxury because it's not happening here.
Right.
Like you go to the supermarket, there are no lines. The only thing that has changed is like when you go to the supermarket, you have to wash. They have like water and a basin, and you have to wash your hands outside. But other than that, like I feel like
there's an awareness, I think, right? I mean, everybody is very aware, and and that in some ways there's a bit of a fine line almost between the taking care of ourselves and being afraid of what could be. So when this whole thing started, you kind of made a little fun of me because you're like, oh, you're panicking, and that was...
Because what did you do? You bought hand sanitizer?
I bought hand sanitizer, and I washed my hands like 5 times more than I used to. So, I wash my hands a lot. I have hand san. Oh, right, I bought a little rubbing alcohol. So you're kind of making fun of me, and which was kind of fair enough. But the thing for me was that if I'm taking precaution, can I take precaution and be careful with zero panic, right? And that was where I was at, because I'm not a panicker.
In that moment, it felt like there were no cases reported in Kenya at that time.
Right.
So I just was like, this is happening somewhere else at the moment. I am not gonna like let something that's happening somewhere else affect my day-to-day life. But now I'm in that place where I'm like, should I buy more food than we need? Like here we only buy what we need technically.
Right.
So we haven't bought. I think if the supermarket was to shut down today, we would have food for 3-4 days.
Tops.
Yeah. So there's that line. This morning I was asking myself, like, am I being smart by going and buying food? And also recognizing the fact that I'm one of the few people in Nakuru who can actually afford to buy food for 2 weeks.
Right.
I think I'm lucky that I have food for 4 days tops. So there's like a lot of like acknowledgement and like digging deeper that's coming with this quarantine, and like checking my privilege and understanding that also like I have a place to go. Like most people would like don't have a place to go. So
what do you mean a place to go? Like
I could leave the country. Like
right.
That's a choice that I have. I don't know if like leaving a country is a privilege going back to the US at the moment.
Yeah, going to California might not be. This could be a way better place to be, but it's hard to know that, and that's the place of uncertainty, And I think that one of the things that makes it hard is that in general, like even when I'm like reading on Facebook or on social media, is this things should be a certain way. And when there's this panic or when there's an issue that we need to face, we have a lot of like, this is the right way to do it. I know the right way to do it. And I want to just kind of also pull myself out of that. Like, I'm going to pay attention. I want to be smart, but the eventual outcome is so, it's so much different. Somebody said to me, Donald Trump is going to invoke martial law. And when they said that, I thought, you know what? Oh, and this was from a credible source. And what I thought at that moment was, I'm just going to take a note of that because there's so much speculation of what's going to come, and speculation becomes our truth, right? So this could be. And we've actually kind of created a whole culture around speculation that I think can be really unhealthy. Because it sounds like it can also be a good idea, because speculation can also be thinking forward, planning for the future, all those things are very good. But when it becomes speculation, then it's like trying to figure out the future or read the future. And that, I don't know if that's, it's just nothing that we as human beings really have, access to, is to know the future. That's not for us to know. So the curiosity for the future, the, moving into with curiosity as opposed to trying to figure it out, I just think is a very different way of going into it.
So, yeah, I guess then I'm not going to speculate about what's going to happen in the next, who knows when.
Who knows, right?
No, I think like last night I had like nightmares, and I haven't like had like insomnia that bad. And I think it's affected by this crisis, and also coming to terms like I am actually have no control about what's going on, and I might be here indefinitely, and I need to be okay with that.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly I had that too last night. My sleep was very light. My dreams were definitely sort of crisis feeling, I felt it when I woke up, this little bit of, almost like a panic, but I know that's not coming, it's just, like you said, it's everywhere every time, we do read the news. There's all this, there's just so much uncertainty,
Yeah. But I think like the way I'm kind of like, and I think it's everyone that I've chosen, or I'm choosing slowly to deal with what's going on right now, and the uncertainty and the indefinitely of being here, and my business not making any money and not having any sales, and is like I am gonna do what I can,
right.
So I'm gonna work on my website. I am going to like reach out to friends who I know that in this moment they have money, they may have marketing ideas. I'm reaching out for feedback. I'm just doing what I can.
Right. Yeah, it's actually engaging, because what we just got for a lot of us was a little bit more time than we had before. And I can say that from a lot of my friends, people I talk to, my people in my family, there's always this like, I wish I had time to do this other thing. And now we've been asking for it, kind of like, oh, I wish I had a little more time, I wish I had a little more time, I wish I had time to do this. And now we've been given that time, and for me, actually, this is something I've almost been planning for in the way that I've been operating. I spent the last year working on this book, and it was a full, 60,000 word manuscript. And I took the pieces out of that were really actionable and made a, what I call the Creative's Handbook. The Creative's Guidebook. And it's it's basically, how do we take whatever is given to us and still find the system and the time to be creative. And I think that when something like this is put upon us, that there's this great opportunity to go and find a way to now bring into those things in rhythm into our lives that we've been wanting to do that we haven't done, and do it. So it's kind of, to me, this is like, oh, I remember this. My life shifted in the last big sort of crisis, right? Which was a little over 10 years ago with the financial crisis. And obviously this is very different, but the impact, there are certain similar impacts, which is that people who had work don't have work. People who had an income don't have an income. People who had no time now have time. And for me, that big shift was, I have to use this opportunity to be creating, and it really launched, a decade of my life that was really fruitful and productive and exciting creatively. And I've just kind of codified that, and finished this book just as this is coming along. And I'm thinking, great, not only can I share this with the world, but I also can go back and say, oh, like, I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing and actually implement these things that I've been doing that are really, really fun, and bring this sense of completion and purpose in a time when there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah, I may use your book to like rethink about my business, about, how I need to pivot, because, the whole plan that I had to go to gift stores and like operate my business has now changed.
Right.
So.
And for your business, there are certain things that you have to be in America to get going, to shift around. There's some business things that have to be taken care of on U.S. soil that we can't take care of. And that could be, who knows when we get to go back.
Yeah, so I just have to think about new ways of doing business.
Yeah.
New ways of pivoting and doing business the same ways with all this uncertainty. And yeah.
And I think that's like what you just said is actually just really important. Is that sometimes we get into a rhythm, and rhythm is really wonderful. Like, I know I get up in the morning and we have this wonderful rhythm with our morning meditations and these different things that we do. But there's also, when something becomes too repetitive, we begin to feel a little bit trapped. And so for all of us, there's a little bit of a wake-up moment, which is we don't get to just show up in the same way that we did a month ago. In fact, even when we greet people, the way we greet people is different. And
it's kind of interesting. Like, I greeted a few guys, and I feel like it was actually like people having a rhythm to like the new greeting.
Yeah, the elbow, the foot.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Maybe that's gonna be like the new kind of greeting, and we stop
Just
using
right.
our hands.
It brings consciousness into the things that we weren't conscious of before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just like, as we wrap up, like I'm thinking like we're not the only people who are like going. Yeah, definitely not.
No, definitely not.
But I think I would like to hear like, how are you going through this uncertainty? Like how are you navigating this time?
Yeah, and if you're somewhere in the world that's, that is either not your home or that is your home, but you have people far away, family, this sense of distance or separation, how is that playing into your life, and how is that not only a challenge, but also how is it helping you to grow, and what are the tricks and tips that you've learned to find strength in this time that other people may be able to really benefit from?
Yeah, and we'll keep you updated if we are able to fly out.
And if not, we love you from far away.
All right.
Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast.
Yes, if you're watching on YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. We do little snippets, just kind of a little fun, either deep, important moments or light and fun moments that we got to pull out that you can, if you don't have time to watch the whole videos on YouTube, we got little snippets you can check out. If you're on the go, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts,
There's
iTunes.
no one who is going to be on the go. People going nowhere.
Unless you're on a run, you're allowed to run.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you need a podcast for the run, just make sure you subscribe, and
and stay home,
and or stay 6 feet away from the nearest person.
All right. Bye.
Be well.